Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining in another week here. A cold and chilly week. It feels like winter now, but some news to talk about. Of course, first off, the big news this week is the passing of President George Herbert Walker Bush, the 41st President of the United States. And because of that, I want to start off with a quote from President Bush. And I think in today's world, today's age, this quote from him is particularly applicable. He said, "America is never wholly herself unless she's engaged in high moral principle. We as a people have such a purpose today. It is to make kinder the face of the nation and gentler the face of the world." And you know, in watching some of the proceedings this week on television, you know, seeing on Facebook in different places, people going up and honoring President Bush, and particularly Senator Dole, who got up out of his wheelchair at the age of 95 and saluted President Bush, his former colleague, person who ran against him for the presidential nomination, but both World War II veterans. And you know, a lot of talk about how this is starting to be the end of what was known as the greatest generation. You know, those World War II heroes, of which many people, including my grandfather, are a part of. And you know, to see Senator Dole be assisted out of his wheelchair so he could salute President Bush one last time, even though they didn't always agree, they ran against each other for president. You know, this quote from President Bush about a kinder nation, a gentler nation, I think really hits home, because so many times today, particularly in politics, we don't see people being kind to one another. We don't see that gentler nation. And even on social media, we see each other being kind of nasty at times to one another about politics. And we need to remember that we are all Americans first, that we want to be an example to the world. And we can't do that unless we treat each other with respect, with civility, and with dignity. So I think a great example in this quote from President Bush, and a great example by Senator Dole this week in honoring President Bush. So may he rest in peace. He certainly always came across as a gentleman and served many roles through the years in addition to president. He was the head of the CIA. He was the ambassador to the United Nations. He was all the different roles that he was in, and certainly a successful businessman as well. So, certainly condolences out to the entire Bush family, including his son, George Bush, who was president of the United States as well. Speaking of this time of year, it's Advent. I'm wearing my purple today. And, as I start thinking about Advent and what it means, it's a time to prepare. It's a time to prepare for the birth of Jesus. And, so many times we get wrapped up in preparing for Christmas by going and getting gifts and wrapping things and baking cookies and all, putting up Christmas lights and all the different things, getting the tree ready, that we don't think about what else we need to prepare for, which is the birth of Jesus. That's the true meaning of this season. And, I think we all need to take time out to do that. And it's a good time, I've found, to really, look at your life and say, okay, am I doing things the way that I should? I know I always don't. There are more times than not that I look at it and say, I need to do this more. I need to do this better. And one of the things I've been doing, particularly this Advent season, is making sure that I focus on reading a passage from the Bible each day. Notre Dame, where I went to school, does a great job with their alumni outreach, and they're sending an Advent series out and even some videos every single day, and it makes it easy for you, so to speak, to a way to connect and to really focus on that. But there are a lot of things out there like that. Notre Dame lets people sign up for it, so you can go to theirs and sign up, but there are others as well where you can sign up to receive a passage each day. And I think getting that by email helps me, because sometimes if I have to actually go to the Bible, I may forget, or I'm not at home, I'm on the road or something, I don't have it with me, but this allows me to do that. So there are all kinds of electronic ways now to connect with the Bible, but there are other ways too to prepare for Christmas and do things in the Advent season here. Think about people that are homeless, think about people that need food, ways that you can serve them. Good time to go through the closets and look and see if there's some old clothes that maybe could come in handy for those that need it. All kinds of different ways to help a kid. If you have young kids with toys they don't play with anymore, donate them, especially if they really haven't been used. Sometimes you may even have something that's been used once or twice, or maybe you got a duplicate of something and you could give that to a needy child for Christmas. But just think of the different ways that you can prepare for the Christmas season to keep Jesus in your heart this time of year. We need to take a break. When I come back, I'll have my guest with me, which is Kyle Cooper, the head women's basketball coach at West Liberty University. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
When reviewing your oil and gas offers or royalty check statements, do you wonder, am I being offered a fair amount? Do I feel comfortable reading the statement? Do I have peace of mind? If you answered no to these questions, you need Bordas Mineral Management. Our passion is helping mineral owners protect and expand their mineral wealth. Our examiners tell you whether you're being treated fairly and getting paid what is rightfully yours. Bordas Mineral Management. Be protected. Have peace of mind.
Recommended by the highest authorities. Danoon Lumber.
It's like a bad one's coming. Yeah. Right?
Welcome back to the show. This is my favorite time each week when I have a guest with me, and this week my guest is Kyle Cooper, the head women's basketball coach at West Liberty University. Coach, thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely excited to be here.
First time that I have had a women's coach on the show, so I'm excited to have you here. And
no pressure, right?
Right. No, hey, you're a couple years in here now to your tenure as the head coach at West Liberty, and relatively young guy to be a head coach. But you've been around the basketball world and the collegiate basketball world for a long time now, and dating back to your days at WVU.
Yeah, it has, and I kind of like the way I've come up. It's been kind of the blue-collar way, and you're working at a lot of institutions, and I've kind of touched all the different areas you can before becoming a head coach, whether it's, student manager when you're sitting there rebounding for guys and statting and so on, and now all of a sudden director of operations and then assistant coach, associate head coach, and now here we are. But I definitely have a more, I think, balanced outlook on all the different processes, and I think that's definitely a strength of mine because of it.
You've had an opportunity to be around some great basketball minds, too. I mean, even as a student manager, being around John Beeline and that run to the Elite Eight that the Mountaineers had as a student manager, then moving over with Mike Carey, who, of course, has had a lot of success with the women's program at WVU over the years, and then, moving along to, a legendary really coach here locally, and Lynn Ullum at West Liberty, working with him. And so what are you able to draw on from all those different people and haven't been around them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just being a sponge, and that's one thing I learned at a young age, and that was something I was encouraged by my family is you can take something positive or negative from every experience, and the one thing I loved about working for all of those individuals is they let you know when you were doing a good job, but they let you know where you need to be to grow. And I learned at a very young age, keep asking for more, keep wanting more, keep being that sponge, and it opens so many more doors for you. And that's kind of been, I think, the secret to my success of getting my first head coaching job is I've kind of always taken ownership and made myself bigger than I probably was, just because I wanted so badly to do right by those people and be looked at by my mentors as someone that has a value in an organization. But it's kind of cool to think that the two winningest coaches in West Virginia history are two of my, strongest mentors and now friends. It's a very cool experience for me.
Whose style do you think you're more like if you look at the people you've coached under?
I would say offensively, probably more of the Coach Ullum, Coach Beeline mentality with the idea of spreading the floor out, a lot of shooters, trying to play a little bit more up-tempo and kind of take what the defense gives you. Coach Ullum and I were a lot like that. That's one of the things that was a natural fit for us. Defensively, I'm a little bit more hard-nosed like Coach Carey probably, but definitely different in the philosophy behind it. So it's kind of a blend of all of them, but I think we're definitely a program that is built on pieces of each of them for sure.
No doubt Coach Carey can get intense with his players from time to time, and in practice and in games for that matter, but so certainly some part of that style. But I found every coach has to find their own identity, be themselves, and that's comes along the way, I think, and you find out who you are.
Absolutely, and I think that that's another thing that's always been at the core of my upbringing is that I've always kept true to who I want to be, and that it's never perfect. Along every step of your life, you feel yourself shift a little bit, and then you got to come back and realign, and you do have to coach that way because I think kids are so intelligent, and if they realize you're not being genuine and not being who you are, they're never going to buy in and they're never going to trust you. And for someone that values that family feel, that trust, that loyalty, and that love, that's what our program is grounded in. I probably tell our players that I love them and care about them more than most coaches do, but then they get to see the other side of it. And it's striking that balance of, I love you, but because I love you, I want what's best for you. I was raised that way, and that's kind of how I coach.
You have kids of your own now. I mean, how has that affected you as a coach? I mean, having your own kids. It's
definitely kept things in perspective. And I actually, working, a lot of people forget I actually worked at Wheeling Jesuit for a couple of years, and Danny Sancombe and I became good friends at one point, and we still are to this day. But he told me, he always would say, Coop, just wait till you have kids. Everything goes in perspective, and he couldn't have been more real in that, because no matter whether you win or lose, I go home and my 4-year-old wants me, like just me as dad, not me the winner, not me the loser, and it doesn't allow you to dwell on things. And it's funny, we were on Thanksgiving trip down in Daytona, and my family was not able to be with me for it, and we took a loss as the last game, and it's amazing sitting in that airport how much I dwelled on it. And I'm like, man, do I miss having my kid right now, because between him, my wife, and now my 7-month-old, there's no time you got to move forward. There's no time to dwell on it. So the perspective's incredible, and I love being a father.
People may wonder, as a male, how do you end up in the women's game? Because, and there's a lot of people that way. Of course, Gino Ariama, I'm butchering his name, but doing my best. Great UConn women's coach over the course of the years. And then you look at the women's game at the Division I level, and you have Muffet McGraw at Notre Dame. Of course, for years, Pat Summitt at Tennessee. Yeah. What's that dynamic like when you're a male coach of female players?
I think it's just all how you approach it, and again, it comes back to being genuine and how you're going to ground your program. And ours is, like we said, grounded in family. And I think that one of the things that's nice that I learned just from transitioning in college, from working with John Beeline to Mike Carey, is I think that women have a little bit more of a pleaser mentality. Like, they want you to know that, one, they want to do right by you, but two, they don't have all the answers. Where I think sometimes when you're working with male players, they kind of feel like, yeah, coach, we got this. Coach, I understand. I know what I'm doing out here. Just let me do my thing. They're looking for more of that encouragement and more of that justification that they're doing right by you. And in turn, I think if you approach it the proper way, the investment comes faster. And that's something that I think we've done a really good job in my 2 years of being head coach here, is getting the buy-in from our players. But it's because they know how invested we are in them, how much we love them. And in turn, now we can groom them and have them grow faster.
You mentioned, 2 years in now, really just a little ways into the second season here, but how have the players, you were around them as an assistant, but what was that like, that transition from going from, okay, assistant coaches can sometimes be even a little bit more of a friend to the players, as opposed to, I'm the guy in charge now. Did you see a change in how people responded?
I think it had to be done in kind of baby steps, I guess I would say. And even the difference between year 1 and year 2, I've been a little bit more intense, a little bit more demanding in year 2, partly because that's the progression we need to have with a more experienced team, but more because those players only knew me as the assistant. They knew me as the person that recruited from the time they're a sophomore or junior in high school, you're buddy with them. But I think that one thing I did myself a lot of good in, and again, having good mentors, they brainwashed me into this, is when you take ownership of the program as an assistant, and you're constantly backing your head coach, you're not playing both sides of the fence. So where some coaches have a harder transition in that, I don't think I did. And I think that there was always that mutual respect. So there's definitely been some growing pains, but I'm vulnerable enough to say that I've grown a lot and they've grown a lot, and because of it, we're a better basketball team.
We need to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue speaking with Coach Cooper about the program, the season, and what may be ahead. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
A lifetime of saving starts here. Belmont Savings Bank, focused on your future.
So, how was your first day?
Long. So, Josh asked me about you.
Daddy's home. Go get him.
For your home, for your life, for more than 50 years. The Hardwood Specialists, DeNoon Lumber.
Welcome back to the show. I've been speaking with my guest this week, Kyle Cooper, the head women's basketball coach at West Liberty University, and you'll talk a little bit about your background here in the first part of the show here. But let's turn to the season and to your team. Season's underway. You got already 9 games underway, and you've been your second year. What are the expectations, and how are things going?
I mean, I think the expectations are up, and that comes from the outside, but more importantly, it comes from the inside. We have high expectations about this because West Liberty University deserves it, and it's an institution that's very passionate about basketball. I'm passionate about the game in general. Then you take in the fact that every day I'm going to work for my boss, who was prior my boss, and built this thing up. So just out of respect alone for him, the grind of working, and we call it a grind as a cliche, but it's a passion. I don't really work. It's just, there's so many reasons to be motivated and have high expectations.
What kind of play will people see if they come up to a game? They want to come up and watch the West Liberty women play. What type of style are they going to see? You're
definitely going to see up tempo. I mean, we play really, really fast, and we want to score early in offenses. We want to score in transitions. You're going to see a lot of threes, but we also have a post presence and a 6'3" All-American in Marissa Brown. So you got a bunch of shooters surrounding an All-American post player, and it's fun to watch. So brand of basketball-wise, if you come up, you're not only going to see it with the men, you're going to see it with us.
With regard to recruiting and looking at players, people may wonder, do you recruit this area? Do you recruit the Ohio Valley? Or are you looking outside? And what's the goal there?
We always want to take care of home, but we look at home being anything in a 2-3 hour window. And our job is we recruit a little bit differently. It's a reference that's now getting dated. It's making me seem old, but we're kind of the Jerry Maguire rule. Fewer clients, more personal attention. There's plenty of coaches that kind of go the cookie cutter approach. They recruit 50 kids all the same way. It doesn't happen with us. We want a short list. We want to show them a ton of love, get to know them, vice versa. And within that window of 2 to 3 hours, if we can find somebody that loves us and we love them and it's a fit basketball-wise, our chance of success is going to go up.
A lot of changes, over the last, 10 to 20 years. It used to be, a lot of high school play. There was some AAU in the summer, things like that. But now, the AAU, the travel basketball, starting at a much earlier age, younger age. What have you seen on how that's affected, the game and people once they get to your level?
I think one thing that, it's the gift and the curse is kind of the way I look at it. Like, I love the AAU because you go to an event and you get to see a ton of players in a central location, and you can really start to pull a lot of talent from just 3 or 4 days of hard work. But I think the one thing it diminishes a little bit is there's always another game. So winning is hard, and building a winning mentality is very hard, and that's something we're priding ourselves on getting back to right now in our program. But when there's always another game, winning is diminished. And I think that's the hard part for players sometimes is you really, when you've got basketball in high school, then in the fall, then in the spring, then in the summer too with AAU, there's always more basketball to be played. So we're very selective in who we recruit and also where we recruit them from, both AAU program and high school. We want winning kids, winning tradition, winning culture, because that means we don't have to change that mentality when they get to us.
Of course, one of the goals for your program, I'm sure, is to always, do well in the conference, do well in the conference tournament, and some excitement this year because the conference tournament will be held actually here in Wheeling at West Banco Arena. Big change from having to go down to Charleston. That got to give you maybe a little bit of an edge, having the hometown crowd and having a little bit of, not having to travel as far, things like that. So it's got to be exciting for the program.
Yeah, it's really exciting for the program. And I think I'm most excited for our fan base because we do have a great following. I mean, it's Division II, but I can tell you I've played at the Division or participated in the Division I level at different roles, and our following is as good as any. We pack the ASRC night in, night out, and not just for the men's games, but for our games. So I'm excited for Topper Nation and to not have to travel. Because when you look at how Charleston was, I would say 60 to 70% of the fan bases down there were our fans anyway. So now you're bringing it to an area that I believe is on the rise basketball-wise. There's a lot of legs behind it. It's not just a football area now, it's a basketball area too. This should amp that up. And anytime we can take, our little geographical footprint and get more investment from the community in basketball, that's a good thing for us.
I know I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, I hope to be able to bring my kids over and check it out. I mean, we would never would have made the trip to Charleston. I mean, it's just too hard, and school's going on for most of the week and stuff like this. Now you can go over, at least in the evening, when they get out of school. And I think it'd be great if even some of the schools, take some kids over during the day. It'd be fantastic. Bus some of them over, things like that. It would be a really cool thing. So I'm hoping that maybe they do that. But,
we are too. We really are.
Well, listen, I hope you have a great season. It sounds like you're off to a good start. Always tough competition, though, and but I hope it's a really successful season, and I really appreciate you being on the show.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
All right, Coach, thanks so much. We need to take a break. When we come back, we talk in sports, including the college football playoff selection. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show. People in nursing homes are some of the most vulnerable members of our society. They're there because they can't take care of themselves. Those facilities have a duty to take care of our loved ones, and when they don't, it's important they're held accountable. We've not only collected record results against negligent nursing homes, but more importantly, we've helped so many families get the answers and closure they so badly needed.
Bordas and Bordas, fighting for justice.
Ho, 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 oh. Call Panhandle. Oh, thank goodness.
Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration is ready to handle any size emergency at a moment's notice. From our family to yours, Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Oh, ho, 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 ho.
Welcome back to the show. It's time to talk sports, and we'll start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And man, the Steelers have blown some opportunities here. First against Denver, and now against the Los Angeles Chargers at home. Big, 2-touchdown lead, and let the Chargers come back. And really, I think the Steelers are playing careless football. I mean, I think they've been playing careless football throughout the season. Whether it be, some careless interceptions by Ben, whether it be fumbles, whether it be penalties. It seems like every week there's something that's just what I would call careless football. I think that even this week, Mike Tomlin let the emotion of the crowd, kind of want him to challenge, a play that really didn't need to be challenged on whether or not it was a first down. It was going to be fourth and a foot anyway. The challenge wasn't successful. You lose a timeout, and then you can pick up the next play anyway on fourth down. So, I think that really it's gotten to a point where, to me, it's careless football, in some ways undisciplined football, and in some ways some undisciplined and careless decisions, I think, too. The Steelers really need to take a hard look at what they're doing right now, because they now sit where the Ravens are only a half game out of first, and the Steelers have positioned themselves where they're going to be on the road for most of the playoffs. If they make the playoffs, they have a tough schedule coming up yet here. You got the Raiders who are down, but then talking about games against the Patriots, the Saints, the Bengals will certainly play us tough. They always do. So, so you've got these situations coming up. So they really need to evaluate what they're doing here for these last 4 games of the regular season, or they're going to be real careful. They could miss the playoffs. So I think the Steelers will get right this week against Oakland, just because the Raiders are struggling. But really, James Conner going to be out this week at running back. That leg injury may be a little more serious than they first thought. So Ben's going to have to probably throw it a bunch, and they better get things right, or they're going to be in trouble. Mountaineers selected for a bowl game, the Camping World Bowl, and some people upset about that, saying, hey, why weren't we selected for the Alamo Bowl? Why not going to San Antonio, playing Washington State? Well, you got to remember, the Mountaineers finished 4th in the conference. I think a lot of people forget that, and they say, well, look, we beat Texas, and we have the same record and stuff. That's true, and I think because of that, maybe we should be ranked ahead of Texas in the national standings. But from a conference standpoint, Oklahoma finished 1st in the conference. Texas finished 2nd. We finished tied with Iowa State, and Iowa State beat the Mountaineers. So that puts the Mountaineers in the 4th slot, and it's really they get the 4th best Big 12 bowl, really the 3rd best because Oklahoma's going to the playoff. But nonetheless, fall in that pecking order of number 4. So a matchup with Syracuse, on December 28th now in the Camping World Bowl in Orlando. One interesting thing to look at, Dana Holgorsen will likely be calling the plays, I think. Jake Spavital headed to be the head coach at Texas State, so don't know how much time Dana Holgorsen will be spending with the defense, although it hasn't looked like he's spent a lot of time with the defense anyway, based upon how the defense has played this year. But he'll likely be calling the plays for the games. We'll see what happens there. But we'll talk more about the WVU Bowl matchup in the weeks to come ahead of that game. Other big news this week in college football, of course, Urban Meyer announcing his retirement from Ohio State due to some health issues he's been having. Has a cyst on his brain. It's been affecting him, gives him headaches. Stress makes it worse. And he's looked like he's been in agony this week. I first came across Urban Meyer when I was an undergraduate student at Notre Dame. Lou Holtz hired him to be an assistant coach, the wide receivers coach. And when Lou Holtz announced his retirement in 1996, I actually told a lot of my friends at the time Notre Dame should hire Urban Meyer to be the head football coach. And everybody looked at me and said, who? Bob Davie was a defensive coordinator at the time, widely thought to be the next guy, and it turned out that he was. But I said, Urban Meyer, I've gone to practice, I've watched him, he's an excellent coach, he's the guy that could lead this program, and everybody just kind of laughed at me. And then again, he ended up getting the Bowling Green job, then Utah, and when the job came open again, the Notre Dame job, Ty Willingham got the job, and I again said Urban Meyer should get it, and everybody kind of laughed. Well, fast forward to 2004. Notre Dame tried to hire Urban Meyer, but Urban Meyer had a lot of success, an undefeated season at Utah. So then he took the Florida job over the Notre Dame job at the time. Of course, went to win 2 national championships at Florida. Notre Dame got Charlie Weiss instead, which didn't go too well. So been following Urban Meyer for a long time. Really hate to see him have to retire at a relatively young age of 54, but I think he's doing the right thing for his health, the right thing for his family, and been extremely successful on the field. Had some issues off the field, of course, with player troubles, assistant coaching troubles, things of that nature, but really do hate to see Urban Meyer have to hang up the whistle, but wish him the best. And I will say that Ohio State will go out with a bang in the Rose Bowl against Washington to send Urban Meyer off in fine style. So we'll talk more about all the bowl games in the weeks to come, but let's talk a little bit about the college football playoff. 4 teams selected: Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma. Now, to remind you, back in late August, I had Major Harris on the show and I did my college football preview, and I predicted the college football playoff this year to be Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and that 4th spot I had a Big 12 team, but I had the WVU Mountaineers instead of Oklahoma. So I got 3 out of the 4 right. I'm pretty happy about that, but Oklahoma ends up winning the Big 12. If not for the Mountaineers, slipping up against Oklahoma State, and then maybe they get that last-minute win against Oklahoma. You never know. But anyway, those are the 4 teams that'll be in. I really think that the selection committee and college football in general needs to go to an 8-team playoff. You look at the teams that aren't in it: Ohio State, Georgia, teams of that nature that I think really could win the championship if they were in an 8-team bracket. And I'd love to see University of Central Florida get an opportunity. I don't think they could win it, but I'd love to see that undefeated team. They've been undefeated 2 years in a row. I'd love to see them get a shot to knock somebody off. It's one of the things that makes March Madness so great in college basketball, is that those Cinderella stories. I'd love to see them have an opportunity, but not going to happen this year. It'll be those 4 teams, and first Alabama, Oklahoma. A lot of points likely to be scored. Clemson and Notre Dame. Maybe a more of a defensive battle, but we'll talk about all of those games in the weeks to come. Alabama opening up as a favorite, and Clemson opened up as a big double-digit favorite against Notre Dame. Don't count the Irish out. That's all the time that we have this week. I appreciate you joining in. We'll see you again next time on The Jamie Bordas Show.